Hello and welcome. I'm Solveig Hanson, Cover Crop Breeding Network Coordinator and a researcher in the Moore Lab at Cornell University. And Megan.
Hi, y'all. I'm Megan Williams. I am an extension agent in agricultural and natural resources for Virginia Cooperative Extension.
So thank you all for making time to join this webinar. This will be an opportunity for our on-farm trial participants and others who are interested to meet one another, to learn about our fall results from the on-farm trial plots, to take a deep dive into fall vigor and winter hardiness in winter pea, and also learn a bit about how SeedLinked is working to enhance the quality of the crowdsourced data that people like you supply. So for a little bit of context, these on-farm winter pea trials arose out of the Cover Crop Breeding Network, which is a collaboration among universities, ARS research programs, and NRCS plant material centers. It's the first nationwide cover crop breeding effort. We work on 3 of the most commonly sown legume overwinter cover crop species, plus cereal rye and winter canola. Cornell, where I am, is the hub site for the CCB Network. And also within our network, each crop has a leader who handles breeding pipeline design, centralized analysis, and so on. I also happen to lead the winter pea breeding effort, which is the major reason I get to join you today. And this is you. So these are the participants in the Cornell-based winter pea trial. So there are 40 participants growing 3 varieties each, plus 3 hub sites. You'll see in orange there that are growing all the varieties. So this is generally a northern tier US trial. So zones 4 to 6 approximately. And Megan.
Yeah, so here are the Mid-Atlantic trials that we're running through Virginia Cooperative Extension, or I might say VCE throughout here. We're largely focused around kind of the Mid-Atlantic Virginia area. This is a Virginia state grant funded operation, so we want to be getting data that helps out with that. So we are looking at hardiness zones 5 through 8, which is why we also have some collaborators, across the country up in those more northern tiers as well, because that overlaps with those hardiness zones. So we appreciate everyone being involved.
For the Cornell or northern tier side of the trials, our main goal was to test our new experimental winter pea varieties out of the CCB network against commercial varieties that were well liked in the first round of trials last year. We want to offer a low-risk way to try winter pea as a cover crop, and also gradually build a grower network of people interested in trialing and maybe in the future breeding peas on farm. And Megan.
Yes, so for the Mid-Atlantic Virginia Cooperative Extension trials, big goal was to identify whether winter pea is a viable cover crop across Virginia. We've got a really interesting range of kind of biomes and climates, so we want to see which varieties may work best for each of our little regions of Virginia. We also want to increase grower interaction with winter pea as a cover crop. The main cover crop here in Virginia is winter rye, followed with occasional vetch use, not a lot of legume cover crop use besides the occasional vetch. So we want to see if we can potentially change that culture a little bit. And just generally want to build our grower network as well to see how we can improve our varieties based on the Mid-Atlantic feedback.
Good stuff. So for the CCB network, for all our crops, there are 2 sides of our breeding process. First, to breed for cover crop performance, we source or develop germplasm, we observe and select it in nurseries, and then choose the best plants or plots. Trial plot sizes scale up as we identify lines that do well over years of multi-environment testing. Then concurrently, we run seed yield trials to inform our breeding process, identify lines with either very poor or very good seed yield. And then finally, we move toward commercialization. So on-farm trials are meant to complement our advanced line trials to offer more locations to test lines that are rising to the top, especially for winter hardiness, which is one of the key traits for pea. So a cornerstone of the CCB network breeding program is advanced line trials in multiple locations nationwide. These are single row 15-foot plots flanked by triticale to simulate the competition of a legume and a grass and a mixture. We note them for vigor in the fall and spring, percent stand in the fall and spring, which then lets us estimate winter survival. And then we harvest biomass at the time of year that growers in that area would harvest biomass. So these have yielded really robust results over the 6 or 7 years of trials that we have for our legume species. So you'll see some of these results in this presentation in terms of environmental drivers of these traits that we care about, as well as detecting wide versus regional adaptation in our advanced lines. And your trial plots are analogous to these. Last year was our first year of on-farm trials, and we started by trialing commercial checks, which was informed by our many years of trialing these checks in advanced line trials. So this is a ranking of checks for which we have more than 2 years of data. They're sorted by biomass, and the numbers you see there are a percentage of the best 5 checks. We ended up choosing 3 commercially available varieties, both for the reason that if you like something, you can go out and buy a whole bag of it if you are working at that scale. And also, functionally, the commercial checks are what we need to improve upon as breeders in this context. So the entries we ended up with were those 3 varieties, Wyo Winter, Survivor, and Blaze, in addition to one called Canandaigua from Lakeview Organic Grain, which is a New York-based seed company. This pea's been, it was selected and produced in New York for many years running. So last year, we had these 3 forage type peas. So traditional leaf, vining, high biomass, indeterminate, and all purple flowered. So these are all Austrian winter pea types. And then one, Blaze, that was semi-leafless, so tendrils instead of terminal leaves, white flowered, to see if anybody preferred that phenotype. The plots that you planted were small scale, analogous to those advanced line trial plots that I described. Results were submitted by a SeedLinked, and the SeedLinked platform automatically generates plots. As you know, we've taken fall data. We'll take data twice in the spring when plants green up or start to put on new growth in the spring, and then when we normally terminate cover crops for spring planting. We provided some planting diagrams to help ensure that plantings are relatively consistent among sites, and we provided a rubric to help reduce variation among participants in what ratings mean, the 1 through 5 ratings that we take. So you planted both last year and this year, and both last year and this year, the plots are met with winter and are meeting with winter, which brings vastly different conditions depending on location, as many of you described in your introductions. Long story short, last year participants preferred the 3 vining, normal leaf, purple flower types over the more compact Blaze grain pea. So for this year, we kept those 3 commercial varieties and added 2 CCB Network experimental varieties. Those are the CCB Doodla Diehard. This was selected by CCB breeder Lisa Kissen-Kusik and farmer Mark Doodla on his family farm in southern Wisconsin. Across 34 years or site years of trialing, it outperformed the best check Wyo Winter for all the traits we care about. So fall vigor, spring vigor, biomass, winter survival. We know that it's widely adapted and especially suited for northern tier sites because of that high winter survival. We also are trialing CCB Autumn Plenty. So this was selected at North Carolina State University by a couple of CCB breeders. Over 38 years, or site years of trialing, it's shown excellent fall and spring vigor, strong biomass, and good winter survival in moderate winter conditions. So we know that it's better suited toward mid-Atlantic, maybe Southeast sites. So for that reason, we chose different CCB varieties as the check that everyone gets for the Northern Tier versus Mid-Atlantic trials. So the Northern Tier folks, you got the CCB Doodla Diehard as your check, or the one that everyone's comparing, and then 2 varieties randomized from the list you see. For Mid-Atlantic folks, you got CCB Autumn Plenty, which is the one we're selected in North Carolina, and then 2 of the 3 varieties you see randomized there. we really are comparing apples to apples this year. So all of the commercially available varieties are normally purple flowered, high biomass forage peas, and so are the CCB lines. So really excited to see what you see. Which brings us to germination and emergence. So for the northern tier, about 2/3 of participants rated emergence. Ratings range from 5, which is all or almost all emerge, down to 4, which is more than 75% emergence. So pretty much everything was in that 75% or greater range, which is good evidence of strong stand establishment. And Megan?
Yes, and we had about 24 people review our Autumn Plenty and 14 to 18 reviewers for our other varieties. Also saw similar ratings, pretty much all of them were more than 75% emerged. And similar to the Northern trials, Winter received the highest emergence rating, but we saw the ranks of the other varieties change from Mid-Atlantic, with Doodla ranking the lowest and Autumn Plenty closely followed Winter. So overall, good emergence, good stand establishment across varieties in both trials, though.
And now into fall vigor, which is where, in my opinion, it gets interesting. So just over half of participants in the northern tier trial rated fall vigor. Ratings fell between 3 and 4. So 4 is strong growth, 3 is acceptable growth. The Doodla Diehard looks to have significantly higher fall vigor than the 3 lower rated varieties. We also got this comment, which reminded me of a big reason we do these trials, just to familiarize people with what's possible in this plant species. So this is the fastest growth rate out of all 3 plant varieties and the fastest I've seen. So obviously it remains to be seen how this survives over the winter, but cool to expand people's awareness of what could be out there, what could be possible. Go ahead.
And in the Mid-Atlantic, for fall vigor, despite ranking 3rd in emergence, Canandaigua ranked 1st, which was followed very closely by Autumn Plenty, and Doodla Diehard again ranked the lowest, which shows us that Autumn Plenty, which was developed, closer to our region down in North Carolina, potentially is going to have some better performance, at least in the fall. But this does not mean that those spring ratings are necessarily going to correlate with those fall ratings. There's actually, in fact, been some negative correlation between fall vigor and winter survival because too much biomass can sometimes be a bad thing for that winter survival. So it'll be interesting to see how these varieties perform in the spring.
Absolutely. I thought it was very interesting the difference between how the CCB varieties ranked in each location. So the unique thing about winter pea is that it can be both a cover crop and a culinary crop, or a culinary cover crop, if you will. That might be suitable or even advantageous for vegetable farms, smaller scale vegetable farms or gardens. These are our collaborators at the Stone Barn Center for Food and Ag and Blue Hill Stone Barns, including Grace. And they help to spur culinary evaluation of these lines in the northern tier trials. So we asked folks to evaluate flavor. About 1/3 of participants did. So all of these fall in the range of I will eat again but not seek it out as a 3, and happily eat it again as a 4. So there's moderate happiness, maybe edging on happiness. TCB Autumn Plenty seemed to be a favorite. Survivor and CCB Doodla Diehard tied for the lowest ratings of the group. But I added these quotes to highlight the variability inherent in evaluating flavor. The same varieties can taste very different based on the weather conditions in the place where they're grown. And to different tasters. We all have different assortments of taste buds. We all have different associations with different flavors and textures based on our accumulated life experience. So to me, the thing with flavor is that whatever you like, you're right, you're correct. Doing a rating like this might uncover a strong trend. That would be pretty interesting. But maybe it just gives you as the participant a chance to be curious and see what tastes good to you and whether this would be fruitful for your garden or your small farm. We also evaluated texture. The varieties fell in a very similar order as the flavor ratings, which makes sense because texture is a part of the overall eating experience. When people commented on texture, there was a lot of this. This particular participant kind of cracked me up in rating everything a different flavor of unremarkable. But we did get a few people pointing to specific characteristics that they liked. More toothsome leaves, pleasant mouthfeel. And then I dug into some numbers and I did some Spearman rank correlations. And we see that flavor and texture are moderately but very significantly correlated. This doesn't surprise me because, like I said, texture is a part of the overall eating experience, flavor experience. But fall vigor correlates very little with flavor, but moderately and quite strongly with, or quite significantly with texture. This makes sense to me in that faster growth probably leads to more tender shoots, and those characteristics of succulent texture, tender leaves that participants noted. Flavor shows very low correlation, and that also makes sense to me because especially sweetness is that accumulation of sugar that comes with cold temperatures. So that could be less reflected in fall vigor. Anyhow, I thought that was pretty interesting. Okay, so how did the results in terms of fall vigor from your plots compare with what we've learned from our advanced line trial plots? So this is just the varieties that we included in your trial sorted by fall vigor. So in our aggregate advanced line trial results, both lines outperform Waya Winter and Survivor for fall vigor. And like we said, in the Northern Tier trials, only the CCB Do the Die Hard did. In the Mid-Atlantic trials, only the CCB Autumn Plenty did. So that's interesting. I could also parse our overall data by site. I haven't done that yet, but that would be interesting to see if a similar trend emerged. Okay, these are genetic correlations between specific sites at a specific year that we did trials on. So a high correlation, or dark blue, indicates not much variation in rank among varieties at that site for fall vigor. Light blue indicates low correlation, so high G by E or variation among rankings for fall vigor. So something that did really well for fall vigor in one site would be not so good in another, and vice versa. So there are 26 environments here. We found, positive correlation among all the sites, but a huge spread. We had this group of 16 sites that had generally high correlation among them. About 2/3 of those were in the South or Mid-Atlantic. A handful with more moderate correlation. Those are about half in the South, half in the Northern Tier. And then 3 sites that were really outliers. When we look by region, in the South and Mid-Atlantic, of all the pairwise correlations that we looked at, about 3/4 were high, so above 0.7. In the Northern Tier, the second line here, it's pretty much the opposite trend. So most of the correlations are lower. And then, like I said, we have these outlier sites. So our conclusion for that is that with respect to fall vigor, we could afford to trial in fewer sites in the Southeast and North and Mid-Atlantic, but we'd want to keep our Northern Tier sites as much as we could because there's more variability there. And last, we got to some environmental drivers of G by E and fall vigor. So that means that this coefficient here doesn't mean that more humidity means more fall vigor. It means more humidity means more variation in fall vigor among the same varieties at different sites. So to kind of see the trends here, we have some moisture variables, some soil texture variables, which really makes sense because these variables would impact soil water holding capacity as well as just the amount of water available to the plant. We have some variables that reflect growing degree days or just solar radiation, some that reflect freezing degree days or cold. So it's pretty straightforward, but comforting to know that a complex analysis supports what we kind of know about how peas grow in the fall. So differences in moisture, temperature, and soil texture between environments can drive differential growth of the same genotypes in different places. I'd hypothesize that some genotypes are more responsive to abundant light and water, and some are more conservative and just less responsive to these like more generous growing conditions. And now we'll move on to Nico will speak a bit about looking at grower ratings versus scientist ratings within SeedLinked and some things that they're doing to improve the quality and reliability of the data that they collect.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, I can put the next slide, but yeah, one concept I just wanted to mention here with crowdsourcing and getting data from many different places and many different people is that we can see definitely more variability. And if we look at from a standard scientific eyes, and we see a lot of standard deviation and high variability and big error bar oftentimes, but really it's the reliability that matter, and I will show after the next plot. But just here, in what vary when we do a trial, especially with people, while we have the genetic or the varietal, we have the environment and management that can be complex and many different type, and we're trying to capture that. We have the GBI and Solveig, you've mentioned some, but we have the people, we have error, we have human error and other. But because we have many of you, and I was just quickly looking at data last week or 2 weeks ago, and maybe we can move to next slide. And I was looking at full vigor across both trial. I was looking at, okay, we had the trial with Solveig, with couple scientists who did all variety, and I was curious to see what was the correlation between all of you data winter full vigor and versus a scientist, and we run the correlation, and the correlation was really, really high. And you can see on the left you have higher bar, like in a conventional system you will say nothing is significant, but you really in a collaborative crowdsourced model, in a way it's kind of it's an error or mistake sometimes to look at just that and say, wait, there's no difference, because really the trend is actually very significant. If you look at Spearman correlation here, which is a ranking correlation, is close to 90, and meaning that the data is good. And so yeah, we need to kind of look different ways sometimes, especially when we do collaborative trialing and we have people from a lot of different people. And that's starting this year, we are really diving into more in SeedLinked to try to improve data analysis, try to better understand people variability, and do different analysis to look at some people. It might be more mistakes or error, non-explained variability, and some might be more management or practice or environments. And so how to account for that. And so that's, if you next slide, we are really, this is kind of like initiative for the next 25 months is really to better characterize environments behind SeedLinked, to run better analysis, better structure management practices, stressor, to be able to run analysis within different stress. And we already mentioned today, it's to allocate weight for certain grower, and testing different model to see what the variability is. Is the variability something interesting behind the variability, or it's just mistakes? And so we are looking at different model to across a broader trial and data within SeedLinked. So it's very exciting, but one key message I wanted to re-emphasize is like the data you share is most of the time very reliable, and I would say in many cases is more reliable than scientists and us or doing trial because it's contextualized, is within your own experience. And so yeah. Grower weight. We are looking at 3-4 different way of looking at grower weight and how to. It's not set yet. We can look at a divergence from the trends. So how you data versus the community data, and how divergent you are from the trends to look at. Okay, it seems to be very different than the trends, and let's dive into it. And is this variability, then we can look at how variable you are and when you rate, like are you rating as a person? Is it only 3, 4, or 4, 5, or do you kind of erratic and fluctuate a lot? And so we can look at are you a predictable reviewer? We can look at how much data you share. Are you sending one data and this person, okay, maybe didn't send much data, and we see it's very different than the trend of community. So are we considering this an outlier, and do we give less weight or more weight to that person? Those are all questions and model we're trying to look at how to establish those different weight. And I don't have an answer right now. We're just playing with different model to see how we diverge from scientific trials, or they're both scientific, but traditional conventional replicated trial, I mean. And so, yeah, good question. So I will have more within the next 12, 15 months on what type of model we will lean towards for grower weight, is kind of how much importance each data we put behind. Yeah.
So we use a few different terms to talk about winter hardiness or winter survival. In technical terms, for our trials, we look at spring stand and take it as a ratio over fall stand, and that's the percentage of the plot that is survived. Winter conditions are obviously complex. So it's temperature, snow cover, wind, soil moisture, and so on that make up the microclimate that each plant or plot is dealing with and trying to survive. We'll talk about a couple of concepts. One is acclimation, which is the process of adaptation to cold or freezing temperatures. That's where those sugars or nature's antifreeze is produced to lower the freezing point of tissues and carry out other biochemical processes. Then there's deacclimation, which is the process of reversing those processes so that the plant can then enter an active growth stage. In these up and down winters we have, I'm starting to think that resistance to deacclimation or resistance to that process of starting to grow again is going to become more and more important, so that plants don't come alive during these weird warm periods during winter and then get frozen off after. So really quickly, from the analysis I talked about earlier, we've seen a few different drivers of winter survival. The most important variables all have to do with acclimation. So variation in temperature measured various ways in the 3 weeks before the first freezing temperature. Also soil variables and wind speed. But Raksha has done some research, very in-depth research into how different pea genotypes respond to freezing temperatures in a cold chamber, and I will let her take over and describe.
Okay, I'm Raksha Thapa. I am PhD student with Ginny Moore, and in the same lab as Solveig. So I'm also working with peas, cold tolerance, and one of my study involves assessing cold tolerance in pea collection, in a hope to identify superior accessions than the current cultivars. I hit the button. So I use the USDA Pea Single Plant Plus collection, which is the diversity collection from all around the world. Some of our cover crop breeding network lines and commercial checks. I first developed a protocol in the cold chambers. I did some experiments and developed this protocol, which involves like certain temperature for the early growth, followed by acclimation time, and slowly reducing the temperature until it reaches the minus 12 degrees Celsius, and then I hold that temperature for like 16 hours and allow the plants to recover for like 2 weeks. So this is my first experiment. Can you hit? Uh, and I also did a second experiment where I added this deacclimation and reacclimation component, where I increased the temperature um, a bit to a normal temperature for 2 days, and then reacclimated them for like around 1.5 days again. Um, and then reduce the temperature and finally expose them to the cold treatment. Um, and then I collected data on the percent survival and growth score. Okay, thank you. So this was the growth score that I used. It's more similar to the Vigor rating that we used, but I kind of measure the height and look at the vigor of the plants and use the same rating for all of my cycles in the growth chamber. Um, okay, move. And so this, I'm showing some of my results. This is the mean survival for my first experiment, where I did that the normal cold tolerance study. You can see here the survivor was like in the sixth rank with the mean survival around 87%. And there were like 5 accessions that had higher mean survival than this survivor. Go to second. Uh, um, and for the mean growth score, Survivor was ranked 11th. And if you see Winter, which is a bit down, like 23 rank, and we have our ALT12 as well, which was ranked 16th. Um, and so there were like some accessions that had higher growth than our superior checks as well. And I have bolded some of the accessions here. The red accession, it was common in between these two tables, mean survival, mean growth score, and also in my reacclimation and deacclimation study, which I will show the result after this. So it was common for all the mean survival and the growth score. And this pink accessions, they were common in this mean survival for cold tolerance, mean growth score, and mean growth score for this reacclimation and deacclimation tolerance as well. Um, so this is the and I forgot to mention. So I did this reacclimation and deacclimation study with the top 30 accessions that I identified from the first study, and so this was the mean survival. You can see like most of them have very high survival, and there was like a one accession button. Can you press?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Sorry.
So it's okay. So that accession had like 100% survival. And if you see, I had the survivor and winter at the right side, these two. Um, so I think like having that 2 days of deacclimation actually kind of helped the plants to move a bit um, bigger, and so the mean survival of the survivor and winter was also like increased compared to my previous experiment. And if you can you go to another slide? And so this is the mean growth score, and even though like many of them had like higher percent survival, the growth, this is the growth score after the 2 weeks of recovery period. There were like a 4 accession which I highlighted here had the higher growth score than the survivor and winter, and these were the accession that I highlighted earlier. It's pink in the table. So yeah, that's the result I got, and I'll have and I can take any questions.
For the northern tier at Spring Green Up, if you have surviving peas, fingers crossed. I'm going to ask you to rate winter survival, winter damage, and spring vigor. And then at termination time, biomass overall, and complete the trial. If you have no winter survival, which could happen, rate all the varieties 1 for winter survival, and then complete the trial. When you complete the trial, you'll take a short survey about your growing conditions and weather conditions, or your growing methods and weather conditions. I will have a short video tutorial for you at both of these points, and a results webinar in July. Megan.
Yes, and pretty much similar process for next steps for Mid-Atlantic. We have some different metrics that you guys will be rating, just, kind of focused on different results that we're looking for. So at spring green up, you'll be looking at winter survival, winter damage, and spring vigor. And the same thing, if you have no winter survival at all, hopefully that's not the case, but if you do, then you would rate all your varieties for 1 and complete the SeedLinked trial. If you do have survival, you'll do that spring green up rating, and then at termination time, which is whenever you plan to terminate, based on your normal cover crop termination schedule, or if you don't have one, it's typically around flowering time. We'll also be looking at biomass, disease resistance, ease of termination, ground cover, weed resistance, overall ranking. And don't forget to look at your rubrics for how to rank all those things. And again, you'll complete the SeedLinked trial. And I'll be sending out probably an additional survey for my jobs reporting purposes, just to get some demographic information and maybe some more feedback on how you enjoyed participating in the trial, so that if we do future trials like this, we can take your feedback into account. And also just a general reminder, if you haven't entered data yet, the SeedLinked app is still there, the online portal is still there, so you're still able to add planting dates and data for each variety, so it's not too late for that.
Good stuff. Thank you to our funders. So from this side, it's a couple of USDA NIFA grants. And Megan?
Yes, our main funder is the Virginia Agricultural Council, and Virginia Cooperative Extension is part of Virginia Tech University.
And thank all of you for joining today, for the time you're taking to make to observe these pea varieties and make ratings and communicate with one another. Really appreciate your curiosity and all the knowledge you're bringing to this.
This is a production of Cornell University.